Hello, my Aquarius friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today to go through the year 2025 month by month and give you some of the astrological highlights that I think are going to be the most influential for you this year. This video is based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Aquarius, I'm referring to Aquarius Rising. That's very important for this video because the house structure is going to be important. There's a concentration in Pisces, that is your second house, and there's things going on that will affect your money access. So if you don't know your rising sign, you're going to want to go to one of the free birth calculators on the internet and get your time of birth, location, and obviously the date, and you'll be able to determine that information. So let's jump in because January starts off with a bang, but the bang was left over from December 2024. You have Pluto that moved into your first house, and Pluto has been making an opposition to Mars. Back in last fall, when Pluto was in Capricorn in your 12th house, Mars made an opposition as it was moving direct. It went through the sign of Cancer into Leo, and then it retrograded in Leo. Leo is your 7th house. So we start the year with Mars in a retrograde at 1 degree and Pluto at 1 degree in your first house. This is like an argument of, it's like a family argument for me because Pluto and Mars both rule Scorpio, and Scorpio rules that sort of psychological imprint that makes me give up my power and control to other people because of their money or their whatever makes them cool, money, sex, however that plays out. So the beginning of the year feels very tense. And because of the house structure of Pluto being in your first house for the next 20 years, you're going to be going through a whole rebirthing of who and what you are into a 2.0 version. And so the 7th house is representing a place where peace and harmony get to be fostered. And as Mars moves through your 7th house back into your 6th house, I think it's also going to reflect how your relationships affect your health, affect how you feel a sense of thriving. The 6th house also rules our everyday lives. So you could find yourself reviewing, how you want your everyday life to go as Mars rules action. Mars is not happy in Cancer. It is in fall because Mars has to address emotions. And Mars really only likes to address resentment, anger, frustration, the more fiery emotions. And here, Mars has to address the more watery and fluid emotions, the emotions that don't, in Mars's opinion, make sense. So we also see the nodes shift from the Libra Aries axis. This is your 9th and 3rd house axis to the Pisces Virgo axis. Virgo being your 8th house, Pisces being your 2nd house. So there's going to be a lot of focus on finances, on how money affects you, your ability to move your story forward the way you want, your bravery about implementing your own creative skills and talents. With Pisces being the 2nd house, sometimes Aquarius, there can be a feeling of invisibility. The 2nd house also rules our family history and our self-worth. Aquarius, because of the nature of its genius, can sometimes not feel really connected to other human beings because they see things so incredibly different than you do. You see things broadly from the cosmic consciousness. You're full of potential, hopes, and dreams. And the North Node moving through your 2nd house is going to compel you to use your skills, to flesh out your dreams. And the South Node is going to ask you to be egoless to the power and control others have over you. And that could come in the form of criticism, in the form of somebody who provides a service for you. That's the Virgo energy. So that's going to be very powerful. I'm going to do a separate video talking about that in a little more detail. Uranus will move direct in Taurus. That is your 4th house. Uranus has been there since 2017, and it's finishing up those last few degrees of Taurus before it will move into your 5th house of Gemini later in the year. And that will stay there. Uranus will stay there until 3032, 2032, or 33. We will also see in January Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node all convene in a stellium in your second house. And this is where I start feeling the power of the Pisces energy, because we will in no short order see that house lit up for months and months and months as the planets travel through it, back into it, and then back out of it. So Venus being the planet of my self-worth, the planet of my possessions, the planet of my money. Saturn being the structures that I build, the fears that I have, the obligations and responsibilities and duties. Neptune, very dreamy, very creative, very imaginative, and yet wanting to escape potentially, wanting to, and Capricorn really doesn't do that. So you may be ignoring in some respects your talents and your skills, and the North Node is going to compel you and inspire you repeatedly over the next 18 months to address them. In February, Jupiter will go direct in your fifth house of romance, fun, playtime, entertainment. It's where children are conceived. It's our high school experience, the fifth house. So this is a more expansion there. But here, Jupiter's calling forth again, sort of having to come off the mountain and really look at the average Joe's life, Gemini, the average Joe running around, doing their errands, et cetera, et cetera. I also think that there could be, for my Capricorns, Jupiter calling forth a little bit more of an expansion of curiosity about romance, or a little bit more of a flirtatious energy, or a more playful energy. Not so serious, I guess. Mars will move direct in Cancer. We just had a big conversation about Mars. So, and as Mars moves direct in Cancer, it's heading back into an opposition with Pluto. So, forewarned is forearmed. In February, now we have a huge stellium in Pisces in your second house. The sun and the moon have joined. We also have Mercury joining Saturn and Neptune and the North Node. Venus has dipped her toe into Aries, but by the time we get to March, both she and Mercury will retrograde in Pisces. We also see in March our first eclipse season, the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, and our last eclipse in the Aries energy. It'll be a new moon partial solar eclipse. Eclipses have a 6-month influence, and the Virgo full moon to me just briefly feels as if it's going to illuminate somewhere where my mind is on a loop, or where I'm trying to perfect something, where I am trying to be something, and my focus is not on really my own personal bar and standard, but maybe somebody else's, because this is Virgo 8th house. So you could be projecting criticism from others, from some of the people that, if you have clients, or you have vendors, or you have patients, or you have customers, you could inadvertently infer more criticism from them, or you could see where you've enslaved yourself to chasing their viewpoint, and now you're like, I don't know if I want to do that anymore, because 2 weeks later, that new moon partial solar eclipse will allow you to plant the seeds in the new moon for more independence, more feeling of, oh gosh, you're already an independent sign, but I think to release that feeling, the haunting, whatever psychological, whatever gives you anxiety potentially, Aquarius could feel anxious when it feels unsure. Okay, and we also, in March, we will see Neptune enter Aries for the first time in 164 years. The last time was around the Civil War in the United States. And I think that this is very significant because the planets are also slowing down to retrograde later on, and an outer planet takes months to slow down. So it will enter Aries and go to 2 degrees before Neptune retrogrades back into its rulership. In April, Mercury and Venus will both move direct in Pisces. And again, they are in a stellium with the Saturn and the North Node. This is really, really, again, sun has moved on, the moon has moved on, but having the planet of my mind, the planet of my creativity and my self-worth and my partnerships, and Saturn, the planet of structure, the planet of endurance and patience, all walking through the second house of my self-worth, my, you know, how do I process my own genius honestly and allow myself to be creative, allow myself to I almost want to say just let your roll out the red carpet for your creativity during this time for whatever you are curious about. If you're into technology, if you're into gaming, if whatever it is, uh, allow it to play out, because you could find, I think a lot of gamers honestly are going to end up, and people who have used technology for entertainment are going to end up finding careers within that. So I don't know if I think it's wasted time. Okay, we also see Mars re-enter Leo. And when Mars re-enters Leo, it not only enjoys moving direct in a fire sign, but it is also going to have that opposition with Pluto once again. And this is on your first house and seventh house axis, the me versus the we, and how do we put that together in a way where everybody's happy. So that's going to come into play. In May, Saturn will enter Aries, hasn't been there for 29 to 30 years. And I believe that when Saturn enters Aries, that this is a good thing, because Mars is exalted in Capricorn and Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn actually co-rules you as well. But here, when Saturn moves into Aries, it's like Mars is like, oh, this is my companion, my ally, my good friend. Let's, prepare the house in celebration for Saturn's entry. They're also a strong military energy with this dynamic for me. Having Saturn move into Aries makes me feel like, generals and corporals, not corporals, colonels, and people that, run the military. And here I think Neptune already being in Aries is asking Saturn to be a peaceful spiritual warrior, kind of like, I think of it like David Carradine in Kung Fu. You walk into a situation and you don't look very intimidating, but if somebody tries to hurt you, you got it going on. I hope that made sense. So I think that's really important, because that Saturn in Aries and Neptune in Aries, they're traveling together. They are in summit. They are in constant conversation. And that's going to affect all of us. And that actually is in the United States, fourth house. So, or fifth house, I should say. And so I think the United States is going to experience some interesting things as well. And in May, we will see Pluto retrograde from 3 degrees in your first house to 1 degree of Aquarius in your first house until October. You've felt this before, so we're revisiting some stuff. We didn't quite get as far as 3 degrees, but for those of you that are early born or early degree Capricorn risings, this is not an unfamiliar territory for you, and yet it's an opportunity to fine tune or to dig a little deeper into what you want to do with that, expressing yourself in its most authentic way. In June, Saturn and Neptune are both in Aries together. I think this is really important, again, because this is going to set up something going on with when Neptune and Saturn go into Aries. I believe that we're going to see the potentials for the reveal of some deceptions within government. I think we're already seeing that now. I'm recording this in December of 2024. And we've been seeing the media in the United States coming under scrutiny for its lack of balance. And I think that's going to become even more prevalent moving forward. So this is in your third house. Your third house is communications. Your third house is how you think, how you speak, how you learn, how you experienced your childhood, how you experienced your teammates, your schoolmates, your workmates, how you work on projects with other people. So with Saturn and Neptune conjunct there, and Saturn is about to make a square also in June with Jupiter in Gemini. Gemini is your fifth house of pleasure, of romance, of the conception of children. We don't think of Saturn or Aries and Gemini being square, but because of the degrees, they are square. And I think that this is important again because it's going to bring up what you think, how you believe. The square to Jupiter is here we have Saturn retrograde. Okay. Well, Saturn is stationed to retrograde, I should say. So it's very, very strong in that stationing. Jupiter in Gemini is moving direct, but it's in detriment. So somewhere we're going to revisit something historic within your life that has to do with your third house energies, and Spirit's going to ask you to go back and look at it with more detail. If I was to say, if there's another sign that can kind of keep looking so far to the future that it can miss the present, it could be Aquarius. Because in your experimentation and in your looking to what can be, there's the potential of something that could be missing in the moment that serves you, especially if it's something challenging, and a square is challenging. So I think that's what this square has to offer you. Jupiter will move into its exaltation in your sixth house. Sixth house, yes, Cancer, for the next year in June. This is a very, very fortuitous time. This is a time when Jupiter feels very welcomed, very warmed. I picture the, mama making, homemade muffins and stews and feeding and putting blankets and cozy pillows. And Jupiter's just like, yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you. So this is going to be a good time. And this is a good time to expand on how you take care of your physical body, and also to start to plan for what type of work you want to do in the future, or to expand upon the work that you're currently doing, as long as it's based on your heart, on what makes you tick, not what is obligatory to you. That's going to be one of the key components here. That's what Pluto is going to do in your first house, kind of blow up any power and control, any obligations that aren't really serving you in your 2.0 version. In July, we see 3 more retrogrades. We have Pluto's already retrograde, but now Neptune does go retrograde officially on July 4th until December 10th, from 2 degrees of Aries to 29 degrees of Pisces. Saturn will retrograde on the 13th until November 28th, from 1 degree Aries to 25 degree Pisces. So we are definitely seeing these two planets hanging out back and forth together, really kind of like the muzak in the elevator of your life. And we see Mercury retrograde for the second time, July 18th to August 11th, from 15 degrees of Leo to 4 degrees of Leo in your 7th house. And that will, again, make an opposition to Pluto during that retrograde. Oh, big stuff going on, big stuff. I'm going to be doing separate, more detailed videos. This, again, is the highlights reel. Uranus will enter Gemini, and it hasn't done that for the last, 84 years. It takes 84 years to go around the Zodiac. It will tip its toe into Gemini, and then it will retrograde back. But once it finally goes into Gemini, it will stay there until 2032, 2033. Long time. And when we think about, your 5th house, Gemini, it could really bring in an unusual and, when I think of Gemini, curious, flirtatious, fun. I just feel like there could potentially be like somewhere, I'm going to say this for Aquarius, over the next few years, you could find yourself interacting with people that really rock your world. Like they think like you, or they're innovative like you, or they're is curious about the same things you're curious about. I want to go to the Star Trek convention kind of thing, or I don't know. And you could find that to be super fun. But that because it's your ruling planet, Uranus, and it's moving into the house of romance and the house of pleasure and the house of entertainment. It's going to spend 7 years there. So this could be super fun. And then when we think about the idea that it's Uranus, your planet is making aspects to Pluto and Neptune, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be so much technological advancements that may change your career. You may find yourself having a 2.0 version that you can't imagine now because you don't know the technology that could be available. Okay, let's go to August. Saturn is now retrograde and conjunct Neptune retrograde for the whole month in Aries before they move back into Pisces. Super powerful. This is again almost like they're just hanging out in the sky with their hands on their hips as they're trying to decide, okay, which direction do we want to go? Well, let's go back that way through Pisces, because there's many ways you can imagine to go through Pisces. You can go through escaping, you can go through drinking, or you can go through meditating and connecting with a deeper part of yourself. And I do think that that's going to be on the docket, people making like a choice. We also see Venus and Jupiter in Cancer. This is your sixth house exact on August 11th at 13 degrees. I think this is a very fortuitous time for you to definitely take advantage of Jupiter's expansion when it comes to your health. You may find yourself educating yourself on more natural ways to heal the body, things that come more from the ground than they do from the pharmacy. We will also see Mars enter Libra in detriment. Libra is your ninth house. When Mars is, as I've been experiencing Mars is my ruling planet. I personally have felt that Mars is really a hero and that Mars is being tasked to let go of resentments and angers or places where Mars has been dissed and felt unseen in order to truly step into the higher vibrations. And when Mars moves into Libra, that's exactly what it has to do. So Mars has to be cooperative, Mars has to be peaceful, Mars has to be harmonious. And maybe that's not Mars's natural way of being, but here in the ninth house of Libra, Mars is educating himself on a higher level, reaching for that spiritual connection of harmony and peace that Libra has to offer. So I think that while this may be considered challenging, I think that all the planets, like humans, are evolving to their higher vibrations. We also will see Venus enter your seventh house and oppose Pluto in your first house. So at the end of August, you could find some challenges coming, at you through your partnerships. You could feel unvalued. You could feel even, Pluto being in your first house might task you to stay away from people that bring out the worst in you, because that's very possible. Pluto's a criminal on the worst level. It's kind of scary. But on the best level, Pluto's a billionaire that has an altruistic way of looking at life. Okay, in September, we will see the second eclipse season and the first full eclipses on the new axis, Pisces Virgo. The first will be a full moon total lunar eclipse in Pisces. Again, that's your second house, a money house, self-worth house, a house of your skills. Something will be illuminated for you. And then 2 weeks later, we'll see a new moon solar eclipse in Virgo, where you can plant the seeds for more clients, more, dependability, practicality, whatever you want to explore within the Virgo energy. It could be even to plant the seeds for removing any shackles that have made you feel enslaved to something. Saturn re-enters Pisces in September, and Uranus goes retrograde at 1 degree of Gemini in your fifth house, moving back into Taurus, your fourth house, to break up whatever old stagnation still remains. Again, your ruling planet. And I think it's so exciting for you because regardless of romance, when when Uranus moves into your fifth house, you could find yourself really standing on your own world stage and feeling the applause of an audience for quite some time. I think it's going to be very powerful and very cooperative in some ways. It could inadvertently for some, it could create a little bit of rebellion, but I don't think it's has to be a bad thing. Okay, now in October, we see Jupiter in Cancer, trining Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So the squares that these two planets had at the end, in 2024 and then early 2025, are now making cooperative, harmonious, supportive aspects to each other. So I think that this is really important because Jupiter, again, is in exaltation. So Jupiter is the more powerful of the two planets. And Saturn, being in Pisces retrograde, gives me an opportunity to review a soul's history that may have been stoking my fears versus expanding my creative abilities or my creative talents. We see Neptune retrograde back into Pisces conjunct Saturn. So again, these two are just traveling together. It's October, they're still hanging out together. They're not going to stop. Pluto will move back direct in your first house at 1 degree. And again, Pluto will be stationing. And that's a powerful time because when a planet stations, it has 5 times more power than it does when it's actually in motion. And that will be, Mercury will be feeling, Pluto will be feeling very powerful in your first house. Okay, in November, Mercury will retrograde from 6 degrees of Sagittarius, your 11th house, back into Scorpio, your 10th house at 20 degrees. This will take place from November 9th through the 29th, give you an opportunity to revisit your networks, your in some ways your hopes and your dreams, but I really think it has to do with your social networks, your social groups. The 11th house moving back into your 10th house of career and public status, reviewing what do I want in the way of my career? How am I standing in leadership? Am I allowing my story to move forward the way I want it to move? We also see Jupiter retrograding in Cancer in November from 25 degrees of Cancer to 15 degrees of Cancer. That starts on November 11th, 2025 and goes to March 11th, 2026. I think that Jupiter loves being in Cancer. So even in retrograde, this feels warm and fuzzy. Again, this is focused in on the 6th house. I'm really suspecting it has a lot to do with your work environment, your work intentions, what you want for your career. And the more authentic to your heart those are, the more your physical health responds favorably. We see Saturn go direct at the very end of November at 25 degrees Pisces. And then we go into December. This time, Jupiter is retrograde, trining Saturn direct the second time. This just feels like I feel like Jupiter is offering me expansion because my belief system has been able to transform my traumas into my tools. I start to trust my intuitiveness a little bit more. That could be very Neptunian. And because I trusted, like I start meeting people and there's a weird familiarity. And then I realize that familiarity is something that I'm not sure works for me. So I slow down and I observe before I move forward. That's what I think this retrograde has to offer. Jupiter is in your 6th house and Pisces is your 2nd house. So you may inadvertently, through these trines, sort of be able to unshackle yourself from a view of your confidence, your self-worth, recognize something, and you're like, wow, that's not really true anymore, or that doesn't really relevant anymore, or I don't even care about that person's opinion anymore. Could very well be something like that because it's something historic. And then finally, Neptune goes direct on December 10th at 29 degrees of Pisces. And again, this is, it's been sitting at 29 degrees for quite some time. Saturn, when Neptune moved retrograde back into Pisces, it didn't move any further than 29 degrees. So it's hanging on to those last few moments in its rulership before it's being tasked to move into Aries and find the divinity within my own physical, mental apparatus known as my brain, Aquarius, that third house, how I think, how I teach, who I hang out with. When I say how I teach, my conversation is how I teach people who and what I am. And if they pay attention to it, they will see. And I think that that's what Neptune going direct in Pisces is going to illuminate in your second house, where there could be deceptions about how great you are, that you've been falling on a sword of some kind for no reason anymore. And now you have an opportunity to move out of that energy and to use your skills and your mind and your voice to move your career path forward. Okay, that's it for me for the highlights for 2025. Again, my name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. Please like, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. There's going to be tons of content coming out this year. Check out your Aquarius Love and Money January tarot card reading. Check out the monthly January, where there's more detail about what's going on. And please I said that already. Please join me Sunday mornings live at 11 a.m. Pacific time. We are on vacation during the holidays, but we'll be back in January, the first Sunday in January, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, that's it for me. My name is Teri Hunter. Once again, thank you so much for putting up with me. I've done a lot of videos and I'm repeating myself a lot, so sometimes I forget if I said something. All right, everybody, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.